is a podcast made by women for women. We talk with a wide variety of experts, ranging from a sex therapist to the CDC and everywhere in between, to bring you the stories you're only going to hear here. Our goal is to entertain and educate, because it's more clear now than ever just how much we as women are doing, as parents, as spouses, employees, just as everything. Don't miss out on being in the know. Subscribe to Soul Source wherever you listen to podcasts today. Leave us a review too, because this part's really important. When you leave those reviews, that's how we're able to continue bringing you the content you love each and every week. So buckle up, Soul Source Society, because we're about to get started.
I'm not here to blame people. I'm not here to find justice in something that happened that long ago, except for with myself. And that I can set up a better way of realizing that trauma can't be deleted. It can and has to be processed so that it doesn't cause you stress for the rest of your life.
Hello, everybody. I'm your host of Soul Source, Raquel Lamel. And in today's episode, we're going back to our early roots here on the show with a guest who joined me back for episode 5 in March of 2020, when the pandemic first began. All that time ago, she'd just written a book about her life and struggles with mental health. We talked in detail about those struggles, and she's back with me again today to give us an even more in-depth glimpse into the woman behind the camera. Ginger Zee, the first female chief meteorologist at a major network and the face of meteorology at ABC Network, is joining me once again today. Ginger, welcome back to Soul Source.
Thank you. Yeah, you've been busy making a podcast the whole time. Congratulations on keeping that going. And I decided I'd write another book. So we've been busy.
I know. At that time, you had mentioned you were working on a book. Mm-hmm. What has all been going on? It's been 2 years. I can't believe 2 years ago I was talking to you. You were at your home and you were just gotten through COVID with your family. And now here we are. And all of this is still going on right now.
Isn't that wild? And
it is.
That's something I don't know any of us could have predicted. That's what I do for a living, is predict things. And the beauty of it is that has helped me understand that moments and things are temporary. And even though we can see some of them coming, some of it can be more amplified than we expect. Some of it can be better than we expect. And that, that parallel of disaster and covering weather and forecasting weather is not lost on me. And it's something that I know I wanted to include when I first started thinking about writing another book. But this book really was written so differently than my first one. The first one was written on airplanes, and I feel like it feels like it, where it was written kind of at the 35,000 foot level of my life. Mm-hmm. And this one was written on my couch in my basement in a pandemic, and I think it feels like it.
It definitely goes deeper, and that reflects the title. It's called A Little Closer to Home. It's the sequel to your first book, Natural Disaster. I cover them. I am one. What kind of made you want to write this book? Because you're right, it is like you talk about, it's ginger light in the first book, and now you've got this version. What made you want to tell this much about yourself?
I saw the response from the first one, and I knew that I needed to write more. I realized that I was in a place of privilege, not just financially because I can afford treatment, but because I have access to it. I have support from my family, and I have something that I've now figured out to be really unique. And that is a freedom and a fusion of identity that few people feel, because I feel so much more whole and less vulnerable. When people say, "Oh, you're so vulnerable," I'm like, actually, I've become less and less vulnerable in the best way, where I feel like my secrets are my secret weapons. My ability to share has healed me. And the more I share on a selfish side seems to just keep helping my identity fusion. On the other side, the connection that I am able to get and have with people, which is, I think, what this world is really about, is about doing this all together, has been surreal. And I knew that after the first book that people writing me regularly, they still write me about my first book. "You saved my life." I have that in dozens, if not hundreds of emails from people. I saved their life with that story. I thought, you can't imagine what else I can share that I think could probably help you even more. And so that was part of the impetus. And then to give such credit to the women of the Me Too movement and the men who have shed light and shed shame and shown how powerful it is to displace shame from where it was for decades or millennia, onto where it should or shouldn't be. I think that is the other thing, is I started hearing their words about sexual assault and rape. And I realized that that was a trauma in my life that I had not given enough gravity to, and I hadn't done enough work on. And I thought, if that's my trauma, your trauma, everybody's got trauma, but
Right.
all of our traumas are not the same, but we can treat them in similar ways. So that was something that I could then share with other people when I went through not just the process of healing, because that's what the book is. It's a book about healing, but about the revelation that healing doesn't just happen and then it's done. You can't. You have to do this maintenance, just like you do in physical health. You cannot just get in great shape and then never do a sit up and push up again. It's not how it works.
I think that's such a key point, is this whole, like, it's constant work. And you talk about that a lot. And when you talk about relating to people, that was one of the first things I've been reading your book. And one of the first things you talk about is, your parents' divorce when you were small. And I'm a child of divorce. My parents split up when I was 5. And that whole going back and forth in the holidays and just trying to please them. I mean, I felt like you were speaking to me. So, I mean, first off, talk with me about that. Why do you think that was such a formative part into you becoming who you are today?
That connection too, and this is the other difference, is I have done a lot of reading of other people's memoirs since, and I'll just get this part out. I mean, even in the last 2 weeks, Will Smith's book and Jessica Simpson's book, I'm apparently Will Smith and Jessica Simpson. So that's when you know that no matter who you are, we are all so much more related and closer together than we think. So there's that beauty of what this type of book can be. Sorry, your second question, because I really wanted to make sure everyone knew that I thought I was Will Smith.
But it's true, though. It's interesting how we're all connected. But the question was about how the back and forth with your parents and their divorce, how that started to shape you.
Oh, yes. And so that, especially the timing, and I don't know that divorce is easy at any age. I can't say that somebody who's even 30 and their parents decide to get a divorce, that's simple. I think there are different challenges no matter what age you're in. But because I was 7, that is a really critical year in a child's development of their identity. And I think that I was not able to have the fusion from my parents because they did not have one voice coming at me. They had 2 that were pretty muted between them, and I became the go-between. So I always try to find the positive. It gave me great skills of being able to go into almost any room and make people as happy as they possibly can be. But it also really put me in it was a real disservice to me in making me that kind of executive level people pleaser and perfectionist. And that I thought that I could have impact on not their marriage, because I didn't think I could like put them back together, but that I could independently make them happy and be less of a problem because they already had too many problems. So you shoulder a lot of that, no matter what part or what age of divorce. I think that a child, their little universe is blown up, and that's all you have. And so, and I'm not, I've totally forgiven. I don't think that's even the right word, but I've processed and moved through the trauma of divorce. And that is really what an important lesson is this book. The first book, I think I was much more focused on my childhood and the chaos and the things that many of us dealt with and formed who we were. Now, this book is more about, okay, so we process the easy part because it's easiest to go at your parents because it's usually safest. And this time I said, I can't use that as an excuse. I've got to go into the parts that hurt deepest. And that's the part about me.
And you go deep into a lot of that. And one of the main things, and you start your book off with this, is the alleged rape, or as you describe it, the likely rape while you were in college. First off, can you tell me, why do you call it that?
Mm-hmm. I describe in the book about, I always find it so strange. In news, we are very concerned about legal and standards, rightfully so, because we, libel and what's the other word? But the legal reasons why you can't just say somebody murdered someone. But sometimes we have it on video and we still have to say alleged. And I think that in the case of sexual assault and rape, that for the longest time, it didn't matter what women said or men that had been in those positions. They were not believed. We're still seeing it in that Southern Illinois case with rape, where we see reversal of a case. We have made progress, but far from perfection. Not that I think that we'll ever get there, but I think that I really wanted to address it and make people go, wait, what? Likely. Because in my mind, that's also how it played out. I didn't want it to have happened. I didn't want it to be a for sure. I not only don't have memory of it because it involved drugging me, but also when I did have evidence and confirmation from people, it was really hard to hear that. And so for decades, I ran as far as I could from it. And I don't think I even was saying to myself, well, that was likely rape. I think I was saying that didn't happen. And I'm just going to pretend it didn't happen. And that is not processing trauma. That's the epitome of not doing it. It's a very normal response. People want to flight, right? You don't fight, then you flight. And I was flying as far and fast as I could away from it. And it does take time. I watch people in different grief processes or traumas process differently. And I'm not saying there's one way to do it, but one thing I did that was I wish I could go back and do differently is just to express it to someone else. And that's the beauty of where we are right now, is it's safe to do that. It's safe to say this happened to me. I think it's much safer. And then when you do say that, at least it's relieved from you. You want to talk about, I'm not here to blame people. I'm not here to find justice in something that happened that long ago, except for with myself. And that I can set up a better way of realizing that trauma can't be deleted. It can and has to be processed so that it doesn't cause you stress for the rest of your life.
And you've been processing this for a very, very long time. I mean, going back to that story that you shared in the book about the likely rape, you said you didn't even know about it at first. It wasn't until you went back the following school year that you heard people talking behind your back and finally found out like what was going on. I can't imagine that in the first place. We've covered sexual assault stories here on Soul Source in the past, but for women who are dealing with this or have dealt with this and maybe haven't processed that or are doing that running, which feels like such a natural response, what do you have? What advice? What would you want them to know?
I mean, I knew. I knew what happened. I woke up in a room naked. I knew what happened. I just didn't want it to have happened. And so I think the confirmation of it that I had finally gotten months later, that was where I couldn't make up an excuse any longer. And I knew that my knowing was confirmed. And that was very hard. But for anybody that it happens to, I think it's okay no matter what you feel. I think it's, first of all, give yourself so much grace because the shame is implied. That is how societally we've done it. And this is the unfortunate part, is this is how a lot of people work, is that we turn inward and we say, what did I do? How could I have prevented this? And that's, I don't even know if I got to that point too quickly. I found distractions and I found ways out of thinking about it. But I would very much recommend just tell one person, even if you can write it down or get it out of you onto paper and put words to the emotions that whatever this is made you feel. Then if you can then even show that paper to someone, or if you can, it's just about talking. And that is the process. When you put words to what you're feeling, that's the beginning of process. And that's the first step in healing. And you deserve healing. And you should know that you are a victim. And I think that's the other thing. Those words have gotten easier to say because I've been saying them a lot lately. But even when I was writing and rereading my chapters as I would, I found it really hard. I found saying the word "I've been raped" very difficult. That phrase to me still feels a little, whew, okay. And that's with an entire movement. You can't imagine when other things are so secretive and, put into closets, or we think that they are. But I'll tell you right now, now that I've written this book, the number of messages of people writing me about their assault and rape, unending. Mm-hmm. It is unfortunately so common. And I hope that is something where we can all start not only saying it to heal ourselves, but hopefully prevent it from happening in the future. Because something that's secretive, I think people don't think others are going to speak about, right? They think, but now hopefully someone, and I feel bad for them, anybody who's in that position, who's going to use their power and control sexually, not only do they take a lot from their victim, but they've taken a lot from themselves because they didn't have to live with that. And that's where my forgiveness and empathy begins, and with them, and where I've come to I think a really healthy place. My husband often asks, because he doesn't understand that, and that is one of those stories that he still gets angry about, and he thinks about a lot, and he says, why can't we do this? Why can't we go find who it is? Why can't we, and to me, that's not important. It's important that I resolve it, and I have, and that I pray for those people, and that I have empathy for them.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, that comes through a lot of work. It's not something that you just
yeah, no, that didn't happen. It took 20 years. So
yeah, exactly. So it's like, I want people to understand that, like, you've put in
a grace you give yourself. Yeah. Time, but hopefully sooner than I did.
Now, one of the other pieces that you talk about is a 10-year battle with an eating disorder. And it's something you said you still are battling with to this day. Talk with me a little bit about that, because there's one story where your mom, she was a nurse, and she was like watching you eat, making sure you were eating. And as a parent, I'm a parent, I can't imagine like the feeling that you feel as a parent, but even for you as the person battling with this. Talk to me about that.
It's interesting you say as a parent, because I don't know a parent that doesn't love to see their child eat, or to see them eat. Like I got my kids to eat a salad recently, and I thought,
that's a big win.
I won the world. So yeah, I made like a green goddess dressing, and I thought, this is it. This is the epitome of parents' goals. It was one day. They haven't eaten it since. I've tried. I don't know. They were just in a good mood, but the food wasn't ever the issue. It was control. I didn't understand that then. I don't think I understood that until I went into inpatient therapy 10 years ago, because even though I had found myself in recovery, I don't think that I was in a healthy recovery where I understood the impetus, or the why I had what I had, and why that was still something that would be triggered regularly in my life. It still is. I will never be rid of it. It will never leave me. And I think that acceptance helped me a lot, is realizing, okay, so this is what my mind does to cope, and here's why it does this. And as soon as I put words to it, and I was able to share those words, and I'm able to share them with you, it takes power away from that thing. And it takes power. And again, nothing to do with the food. So having my mother be informed as a nurse practitioner and know the signs, and she could see it happening, she still couldn't know exactly what to do when it was her child. And I've spoken in a couple eating disorder groups, and I think you have to have a team of people, because even though she's a nurse practitioner, she's still my mom first. And that was hard for her. And she ended up getting to the point of being so scared that she had to use fear. And that's not, doesn't work for everyone. And it doesn't get to the heart of it. And it doesn't, until the person's really ready and has enough help. I don't think that there's anything that a family member necessarily can do except for be there and support them, and make sure they get the best help they possibly can, because eating disorders do not discriminate on, how much money you have, or what your race is, or what your gender is. It's everyone. And that's the wild part about them. And it impacts so many people. And it's one of the top most deadly psychiatric issues in the whole world. And I think that's the other thing that's missed a lot, is people don't realize. And I think now that I've had this beautiful, again, privilege of getting to this healing point, it is my responsibility to help other people understand this a little bit better, as much as I do now.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing it. And there's another big story that you talk about, another trauma in the book, and that is an abortion that you went through. And that actually ended up spiraling into a suicide attempt. You've had 2 of those. I mean, you really get deep into a lot of really dark things in this book. Talk with me a little bit about how that all stems from a mental health struggle, and how you're coping with that still today.
So the words you chose were really important. You said an abortion you went through, instead of that you had, because I think sometimes, and that's why that chapter is called The Choice, because you don't see abortion talked about a lot. There is no abortion movement like a Me Too movement. It is extremely closeted because it's a very difficult subject, and because it always turns political. And as I said in my book, I don't want this to be political. I'd love for us to have one discussion about it without politics, because I understand there are two sides, but really, I think that there are apples and oranges and everybody's talking about the same thing, really, at the end. I really hope that what can come out of this and me talking about it is a substantive discussion, a headline. Can you imagine a headline that actually addresses prevention, education, caring for women who have unwanted pregnancies and counseling? Can you imagine if that became where the emphasis and energy and money and time all went?
It could be world changing.
It would be world changing. And then what about, why is it on women to choose to protect themselves alone? How have we not, and I know the science can do this, gotten a medication for men? Why is it up to women? Why is that not talked about in every article? So let's put some money toward that. And I think that misogyny becomes a much bigger part of the discussion, because I'd love for people to have a choice before the choice. And that's what I really wrote that chapter about. And then talking about why my story is important, I think, because I think there's so much more that I could have done, in that I should have spoken to someone. And I did it all alone, because people think they have to do everything all alone. And that is not something you do alone.
A lot of this, I mean, mental health struggles in general is not really something you can do alone. You can't do that in a vacuum, can you?
No. And I was lucky to have, my mom was pretty open. She knew she had a lot of, in her family, she had mental health issues, and that she was open with. But the shame that surrounds people within their family and their friends when it comes to mental health or rape or abortion, that's what drives us to do this or think we have to do it alone, because we couldn't possibly be worried. We are so worried about what other people will think and about what we think about ourselves. And that's really what changed in me when, even after writing this book, is that I was finally saying, not only do I not care what you think, but I found my assurance in me, and I'm safe because I approve of me. And that's about all I need. I still want my parents to be proud of me like a normal person, I think. I'd love it if my siblings, were proud to have me as a sister. And I think but if they don't, I think I'm actually okay with that too. And like, that's the part, is being the best me I can be is what my goal is. And it's becoming a parent helped a lot with that, because I watched my son, and it also alleviated my parents of a lot of the responsibility I thought they took. But I watched my son, who came out of me as a perfectionist. And I was like, wait a minute, you're not growing up anything like me. So I can't just blame that all on my parents' divorce. And that's the truth, is that we do all have inherent personalities and ways about us. I think birth order has a lot to do with it a lot of times in the environment. But I love helping him learn emotional regulation, because I'm like a 6-year-old learning emotional regulation. I'm brand new at it, and I feel very fresh in the subject.
One of the other things I wanted to ask you about is, the United States in general, I think, is a very fast-paced style of living. And do you think that contributes to mental health at all, issues and struggles people have?
Yeah, we don't have time for anything. We don't have time when, thankfully it's changing, but the war on sleep that I think that we had for the longest time, where it wasn't cool if you slept a lot or you got a lot of sleep, I think that we've shifted this now. But sleep is the foundation to not just physical health, but to mental health. And when we didn't have that, and that was societally not accepted, but you know what I'm saying? People like compared like badges of honor, like, I only get about 4 hours. Like, that's maybe there are some people who that's okay for, but everybody's different. And in general, most people need 7 to 8, and like, why are we not comparing and saying, heck yeah, I got 8.5 last night. This is outstanding, right? Like, you can't, the pursuit of happiness, which I wrote about in the book, I think is number one problem that we've like founded our country on, this thing where we were like, see ya, Europe, we're going to be over here and be happy. We chose to pursue something that's transient. Why would you pursue? That's like saying I pursue anger, the pursuit of frustration, the pursuit of an emotion. Emotions change all day, every day. You know how many times I've been happy today and how many times I've been sad and how many times I've been frustrated? We're riding the worst roller coaster to try to find that ridge of happiness. Uh, and so pissed off anytime we're not there. Like, no, the way down is fun too. You just got to take the ride. Right. And I think that's the other thing that I like to remember in my day is like, well, this is part of it. Because if I was high on happiness all day, something's up. It's not how the world
It's
works.
not normal. Yep.
No. Tell me a day you've been happy all day. You can't.
Yeah.
You'd be so exhausted if you were happy all day.
Well, there's a line, and I really like this line. So I'm going to read it verbatim, and then you can tell me about it. It said, it was part of your chapter where you were talking about meditation, and it says, quote, with our blinders on, we run full steam ahead, doing 20 miles only to have not seen a damn thing along the way. Sometimes we can do less to see more. Explain that to me and how that can help with what we just talked about.
Right. Something like stop and smell the roses. We've all heard this since we were kids. I don't think anybody employs it, nor do they think it's a badge of honor. And so that's why the reemergence and the kind of focus on meditation is really exciting to me, because whether it's prayer or meditation, it's mindfulness. It's all of those things, no matter what they are slow, or they take you into the moment. They take you into your breath. They take you into the only moment that matters, which is now, because we are all moving through those moments. They make you aware. And I think that in all of that, it can make your ability to go back to a place of peace, which is what I keep saying. Instead of a pursuit of happiness, I think it should be pursuit of peace. Be at peace with being frustrated, be at peace with being angry, be at peace with being happy. And I think that's where I believe the slowdown should really be taking us, is into the peace. And that's what I think of when I do meditate. My mind still, and I've been doing it for years now, and it's still all over the place because that's how we work. And so I've accepted that part, and I'm able to more and more time be able to say, that's a nice thought, Ginger. Moving on. That's a nice thought. Moving on. And I'm able to then apply that, just like, that's why I call meditation. Dan Harris, my colleague, former colleague and friend, he wrote books on it because he told me 10 years ago, he said, meditation is going to be like the treadmill of the brain. And I was like, what is this guy talking about? And then as I had gone through my therapy, I found it to be, I think of it as, yes, the treadmill, but I think it's more like, to me, it's the strength. It's the sit-ups or that repetitive, right? The part that you can go to throughout the day, and your strength, you're like, wait a minute, it's working. I've been doing core work, 10, 15 minutes a day, and it's working.
That's exciting. Yep.
And that's exciting. So I hope, as far-fetched as people might think meditation is, there are so many forms of it, whether it's active and yoga type meditation or guided meditation, or there's so many, like just you doing meditation. Even everything I do, I try to find meditation in it. When I open my AirPods here, I can look at them. I think about where they were made. It sounds a little wild, but that's being present with my AirPods in this moment. They're special. Who made this? This is amazing.
They are an amazing invention. Yes, they are. Or like wireless headphones. That's an amazing thing right there.
So I think that's that. You want to feel connected, and people talk about being in the moment. I'm lucky that, and I spoke to Nick Cannon. I was on his show, and in the break, I actually talked to him about this. I said, because this is a guy who, makes us all look like we're doing nothing. And I thought he is like the way people look at me sometimes, and they talk to me like, man, you're doing so much. And I'm like, yeah, but busy is relative. And I asked him, I said, so the more you do, the more present you become. I'm just guessing. And he was like, no question. And he's a very mindful guy. He does therapy. He does, so I thought he knew exactly where I was coming from. We had a minute in the break, and that was our conversation. And I was like, okay, great.
More of that connection. That's the incredible piece.
Yeah. No, I felt it. And I feel it with everyone in this book. I don't know that this is different too. It's like, the shows I've been on, even, when I go on there to promote something like specials and meteorology and things I do, it matters because it impacts people's lives. But this book, Rachel Ray, she's like, I stayed up all night and I read it and it was like touched me. It's going to touch everyone. It's good because all of our stories, if you tell me your story, I'm going to be like, yep, me too. And I want that to keep coming out of this. And I hope that it goes beyond people just learning mine and they share it with me and they share it with their neighbor and they share it with their coworker.
Well, we just covered a very snippet of Ginger Z and her book and what she talks about and just her life in general. But guys, go out there and get this book. And Ginger, if people want to find a little closer to home, where can they go?
Anywhere really that books are sold. It is also on Audible. I read it. And so I think that's always a fun way to take it in if you, like doing that kind of thing. And then it's on all the ebook things and the bookshop.org is a great way to support a local bookshops that carry it. You can find it there. So if you just Google my name and Disney books, you'll find it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here and sharing this with me, Ginger. I appreciate it. And best of luck as you go forward.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for listening. And if you want to hear more Soul Source, just subscribe to our show. We're available wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can watch us too. We're on YouTube. Just look for Soul Source. Soul Source is brought to you by Red Shoes Inc., a leading agency specializing in crisis and strategic communications, media relations, social media, and so much more. To learn more about Soul Source and Red Shoes, visit us at redshoesinc.com.